Great to see you, Joe.
Awesome. Once again, I just want to thank you all for your sessions earlier today and taking the time once again to wrap up what I think is an awesome conference. Thanks to you in part. So we're going to go around the room. We have first question in, and let's get to it. First question is, as someone in QA, how do I promote a shift left with my QA development team? So best way, Paul, let's start with you. You're on the top. I don't know who that is on the Brady Bunch, but you're the top guy here. So,
well, because I'm the one with the funny hat.
That's right.
Okay. The best way to do it, shift left. So you want to, definitely make sure that you're doing your agile processes, doing standard, morning stand-ups with your team, keeping track of what your processes are, what your deliverables are for your sprints, and make sure that you're addressing any challenges that happen to be coming up. That's the best advice I've got. Stick with agile and the safe methodology. It's good.
Awesome. Roger, any thoughts, especially when it comes maybe to security? Getting started?
Yeah, or QA in general as well, in terms of shifting left. I'd say focus on the benefits to the developers as well, right, in terms of the overall shift left approach, right? So by shifting left, reducing defects earlier, whether that's security defects or overall quality defects, you're going to have less churn in the late stage, right? Less rework that's going to need to be done as well. So that'll allow them to maintain velocity, less distractions as they're getting ready for the next sprint, et cetera. So a lot of benefits to the developers too. That's going to make their core job much more enjoyable.
Awesome. And Krishna, maybe operationally, from someone that's in QA, away from them to help them shift left? Krishna? We'll be back to Krishna. We'll go on to Richard. Any thoughts, Richard?
I think Richard's on mute over there.
Richard's on mute. Richard, take yourself off mute. Nope. Okay, we'll be back to you, Richard. Let's next on the list is Graham. Graham, any thoughts?
Really, I'd just reiterate what's already been said, that the best way of promoting it is to just emphasize that by shifting left, you're testing sooner, so you're going to get to the root of your problems before it becomes a big maintenance affair. So I think it's pretty easy to find lots of evidence online of just how effective it is, and also getting development and QA to work closer together. That's again something that really helps to make that happen. And then I think everyone appreciates just how successful it is, and it becomes the general model.
Awesome. And I'll never forget how to say Mihai's name. He told me a great way to remember it. So Mihai, any thoughts, especially from your experience with Accenture, how to get this to happen?
You'd have to repeat the question because I was actually blocked out of the
Sure.
of the session here.
Best way to get QA involved in helping shift left their team's efforts?
Oh, it's easy. Come to Accenture. We'll help you. No, so well, on the light side of things, the best way to do it is not go shift right, but on the serious side of things, the best way to do shift left is to test early in the life cycle and just make sure that your developers are included and they see the value of shift left, realizing I can't remember who it was that spoke before, but just proving the value of testing to developers. I think it's a great deal.
Awesome. And Richard, are you back? Are you off mute? No, you still can't hear you. All right, we'll go to Jonathan because I know Jonathan always has some awesome advice. Jonathan, any thoughts on on QA, how they shift left? And Jonathan's frozen. All right. Cool. All right, so next question then.
Sorry.
What resources do you recommend for people wanting to learn more about automation, DevOps, or ADM? Probably a question you all get asked a lot. Let's start at the bottom now and work our way up. So, Mihai, you still there?
I'm still here.
Thoughts?
And I was just preparing this for Richard, but
yeah, there it is.
Sorry, I didn't catch the question again. Sorry.
What resources would you recommend to someone or for people wanting to learn more about automation, DevOps, or ADM? No, did you freeze, Mihai? All right. Don't know what's going on here. Is everyone... Mihai, let me lower people's streams here. There's a way I can do that. So as I'm doing that, Graham, you're up. Any thoughts?
Well, I guess the obvious being Google and YouTube. I'll say YouTube for the American listeners and YouTube for anyone in the UK. It really is a good resource, but it depends on really if you've already decided what tools you want to use. For example, you'll find so much in the way of tutorial videos and stuff for UFT on YouTube. LeanFT, a little bit less, but the whole process for moving left, I mean, obviously, Vivid is a great resource. Your test automation guild as well. I think really between those, you should have everything you need. I can't think of anything else.
Very cool. All right, someone just jumped in. So, Mihai, any thoughts on this? I think you're back.
I would, but I didn't catch the question.
Sorry, the question is any resources you would recommend for people wanting to learn more about automation, DevOps, or ADM?
Well, yeah, as Graham said, YouTube, I think it's full of videos. There's also some, if you look on the testing forums, I think the Vietnamese board was actually super useful for me at least. And there's actually a couple more forums. I just can't remember their names now. And you will find pretty much all the information. The least information you would get is probably from the the Micro Focus forum. So therefore, Vivid is actually the best place literally to get a hold of the experts and learn more. I would also say just download the trials of the latest versions. I've literally had one discussion this morning with one of my colleagues in Accenture, and they haven't seen UFT from version 11 upwards. And I think that a lot of whatever's going on in the market at the moment is, with regards to all the other vendors coming through and pitching shift left and shift right in AIOps, is just what I call the Magoo effect, because pretty much you're bombarded with all this information and you don't know where to go, what to get. And the best way to get it is to actually ask to ask it from the experts, and therefore ask Vivid, and then also try it out on your own, because otherwise you won't really know what's out there until you try it. So yeah, that's pretty much in a nutshell from my side.
Very cool. So, Richard, you have audio yet? No. Krishna, I think you've... What's that?
I think that Richard is showing us the future of Britain with Brexit and not having audio in.
Probably. And Krishna is in Vegas, so I don't know if that's just a picture while he gambles. So, Roger, any thoughts on best resources you would give someone for automation, DevOps, or ADM?
Actually, my immediate thought is I wish I was in Vegas with Krishna.
But
yeah, so I'm going to sound a little bit like a broken record, but a lot of great ideas and thoughts that folks previously were saying. And there's just a tremendous amount of good information that's out there from a variety of different sources. The forums, Micro Focus has some great information out there through their various forums and websites. Great videos and demonstrations, right, of how to, and from a model office perspective, implement some of the DevOps integrations and things along those lines. Somebody said as well, though, I think lining up with some of the experts, folks that have implemented and done DevOps and automations right in real life. You can learn a lot from kind of the real world experience. One of the things that we do when helping customers with their DevOps adoption and implementations. We have a best practice, our DevOps dojo. We bring together some of our experts that have done this for multiple different customers, and then we bring some of the new customers that are onboarding together, individuals across the development, the operations, the security teams, and we kind of sit in the same room for a couple of days. And it's a combination of some evangelizing and training around DevOps overall, the mutual benefits to all of the various teams. But it's a great opportunity for folks to kind of ask questions, right? Some real world questions, these types of challenges we have today. How's that going to work in a DevOps, a DevOps type of environment? These are some of the hurdles we see. How can we overcome them? So you can't emphasize enough. I'm spending some time with some of the experienced experts that have done that as well, and having good communication forums with them, mentoring, coaching, and things along those lines as well to help build up your skill.
Very cool. And Paul, I know you have a bunch of resources for us.
Sure. How about if you're looking at, oh my gosh, I got a light coming in here, so hold on one second. Here, this is my secret resource for working in UFT. It's an older book, but it's Taran Lawani's Quick Test Professional Unplugged, and he also has a bunch of other books out there. So I'll give a really good shout out for that. So books are always a good thing. A little bit. I'm not sure if I can do this. Continuous testing for DevOps professionals, and that's Aaron Kunzberger. He's definitely a thought leader in our industry. So that's my recommendation there.
Awesome, and I see. Good.
With Aaron's, he's also got a book called the Digital Quality Handbook, which I would definitely recommend, especially if you are part of that digital transformation journey. I think, the resources that you guys already mentioned, I think I mentioned that we've moved all our content over to YouTube recently. Udemy is a fantastic resource. I've noticed there's quite a few Micro Focus products that people have done DevOps courses, and then finally, you've got things like Audible for some great books in, DevOps and beyond. So, lots of great resources. And obviously, Vivit is a fantastic resource, as well as obviously the test skills and the podcasts that Joe does as well. So, definitely check those out. I know Paul features in a number of those.
Awesome. Thanks for that plug. Stephen, welcome to the roundtable. So the question was... What resources would you recommend for people wanting to learn more about automation, DevOps, or ADM? Any thoughts around that?
Yeah, so I don't want to repeat anything that anybody else said, Paul. I saw some books there, but I couldn't get audio. One of those books I have, I believe it's a newer version of it, but I'm not sure if this was discussed, but I did talk about it in my keynote earlier this morning. And that was around conference events, and I called out one, and specifically it was called the DevOps Enterprise Summit. So what was really interesting about that event, and it's an annual event, it was held this year in October in Las Vegas, is that it's an event for organizations that are trying to get to DevOps, and that's such a broad definition. What does it mean to get to DevOps? But it was really around not so much what are the tools that are available, or what vendors or consultancies are in the space that can help you. It was really around let's get people of like minds together, meaning customers, meaning organizations that are trying to get to DevOps, put them in a room together and get them talking. And they had some really interesting setup in that event where they had these coffee talks, which was really just sitting down and having coffee at a table, and the table would have a particular topic around DevOps. For instance, security. What does security mean to DevOps? And there'd be 10 chairs, and the first 10 people that sat down, they got to talking about it. And these were organizations that had either tried and had some success with that particular topic around DevOps, or they were organizations that want to have success and are trying to hear from other companies that are being successful. So that I would say in the few days that event lasted, for me, it was extremely informative. And the reason I found out about the event in the first place was because one of my customers had gone there last year. And if you saw what that particular customer was doing before the event versus 6 months after the event, it was obvious that that event was a game changer. So I'm not being paid, by the way, by that event or anything, but having an opportunity to sit down with your counterparts that have had some level of success there. Absolutely, there are YouTube videos that are helpful. There are case stories that may be helpful, but to really have that one-on-one dialogue is extremely powerful. And it also exposes to, the successful party things that they may not have thought about, or things that they weren't successful with, and the other party was. So that dialogue, I think, because of where we are with DevOps, I call it an infancy. It's not really infancy, but we're still very much trying to figure it out. Having that opportunity to do something like that, sessions like we had this morning with the Q&A sessions after those keynotes, where you can kind of talk back and forth, events like this, anything of that nature, I think is going to add a lot of value.
Awesome. Great advice, Stephen. So, Graham, I'm not going to pick on you, but I think you answered this already, but maybe the person didn't hear the answer. Sergio has a question, and so we'll start with you, and if anyone has any opinions, we'll go to you as well. But Graham, this is for you right now, and the question is, do you feel that tools like LeanFT have a place with QA teams or more suited for developers?
I'm really glad you asked me that question. I was itching to answer. So it really depends on your definition of QA team. For example, when I think of generally our QA team at Travelport, we have a lot of subject matter experts that know the ins and outs of what's going on behind the scenes, but they're not developers, they're not programmers. So even to use a tool like UFT is challenging. It's a lot of trying to understand, the logic flows and so on. But then we've also got some people in our organization that are more automation engineers, and this is what they do every day. So I would say it really depends on that scale. If you are even, I would say, consider yourself to be a moderate user of UFT, I would think you can certainly move to LeanFT, and it does have a good place. If your QA team is mainly functional testing and SMEs, then probably not, no. Hopefully that answers the question. Do you think?
Yeah, I think so. If anyone else wants to augment it, or you want me to go to the next question, let me know. So if anyone has a strong feeling about LeanFT, just raise your hand and we'll get to you. Paul, I know you mess with everything, so.
I do mess with everything, but I haven't had as much time with LeanFT as I wanted to, and I definitely want to have you reach out to me. I think it was
that's
Jonathan,
Graham.
I think Graham England. I watched your entire session, and I'm totally hooked. And what he said was actually perfectly right. It's easy enough that you can get people, even if they have just a little bit of coding experience, you can get them in and really augment your automation team. One other thing I do like to tell people is that I'm not here to try and kick a manual tester out to the curb. It's really, I want to be able to give them more time to do exploratory testing, which automation is not all that good at, but manual testers are great. And if they can also learn how to do automation, that is fantastic. So I totally agree with what Graham says over there. So
either Mihai or Stephen, I know you work with a lot of customers. Either one of you, did you see a large adoption of LeanFT or thoughts around it?
So I personally have seen an aversion to LeanFT because it's associated with code. And what ends up happening is a lot of customers that have had traditional QA organizations, there's a fear, I would say. Not so much they don't want to do it, it's that they're afraid. They hear this term code and it automatically associates to the developer persona within their org. So in those organizations that are still siloed and are still trying to break down those walls, it's a harder discussion to have. It tends to be a throw over the wall type of discussion. Whereas those organizations that have adopted agile practices, even if it's just like a pilot project where they have these cohesive teams where the developers and the testers are working together, those testers bring a lot of skill set and capability to that process, and so they're very much appreciated in that, and the developers tend to very much help them in what's involved with coding. And a lot of what I'm excited to hear is even those manual testers or those testers that have been in the industry for a long time but never touched an IDE, never wrote any code, are writing code, and they're excited about it. It's a new kind of feather in their resume cap, so to speak, and they're feeling empowered because of that. And they are very much, I would say, very much more interested in using LeanFT. So I'm not seeing wide adoption of LeanFT just yet. It is a relatively new solution, and a lot of our customers, frankly, don't even know it exists. But we are seeing an increase in that. I had a call this morning with one of our larger customers that has adopted a very pragmatic approach to a DevOps pipeline across the organization, and LeanFT is one of the fundamental components, meaning projects within that org, if they are going to DevOps, LeanFT is one of the tools that's not necessarily forced on them, but it's in that primary catalog of tools that they have access to.
Very nice. And Mihai, I don't know your experience with LeanFT. Any thoughts, or you want me to move on to the next question?
Same thing here as well. We haven't seen that much adoption of LeanFT, particularly because the aversion towards programming skills required. And what we have seen in the market now is actually a great deal of adoption of so-called touchless and scriptless test automation tools. And those tools are primarily being sold to business SMEs, not to testers, not to developers, which is a different paradigm altogether, which makes our lives even that more difficult, because at the end of the day, you will still require automation engineers. And now to Paul's point, yes, all the manual testers are good and great, but you will not be succeeding if you still maintain yourself as a manual tester going forward. So you have to dip your toes in automation. Automation is directly linked to performance testing as well. And to roll it back to LeanFT, we have had some clients that have adopted LeanFT very well, I must say. They are, technical testers, as we call them, which have the skills from left to right, going into from manual testing to automation, and obviously some of them are DevOps engineers as well. So yes, we do see it happening, but not at the rate one might think would actually happen at the moment. So I would say we're still on the fence on that to see exactly how LeanFT is going to be penetrating the market. The DevOps projects are definitely going to be using it much more than the traditional automation projects, and and that's pretty much it. I have more to say, but I'm going to stop right here because I know we're short on time.
That's perfect. Jonathan, I don't even know if you were supposed to be part of this roundtable if I called you out, but I don't even know what time it is in London. What is it, like 2:00 in the morning?
No, it's only 9 p.m. So
okay.
I'm just sat
what do I know?
Kensington, so it's absolutely fine. And I was moderating the Slido questions as Chris had to nip out. So when you called my name, I was like, okay, I better jump on and see how things are going. But yeah, it's interesting to see around LeanFT. I remember being part of the initial trials for what they were calling it as coded FT, but it was too close to coded. Either Microsoft have now dropped support 2019, and that's an interesting one because you've got this kind of containerization / approach to low code with YAML, and your browser. You would be thinking that the LeanFT adoption would be ramping up but I think the disconnect between UFT and the actual UFT runtime agent, which you can get for LeanFT, I think was just too much of an adoption challenge for people invested so heavily. But yeah, let's watch this space, I think.
Very cool. And just so people know, I have a limited amount of numbers for these calls, and we're reusing them. So you may see people pop in and out. So I apologize. I just sent Paul a different number to call in on, so we have everyone here that should be here. So Robert, I know you're just joining the roundtable. Do you have any best practices or resources you like to give people when they're trying to make a transformation to DevOps or automation or anything like that you would recommend? And did Robert, you still there? No. Okay, so next question. Micro Focus announced LoadRunner Developer Day 1 to help organizations shift left. Do you have any insights into how to shift right by leveraging intelligent operations, AI ops platforms? I don't know how many people are aware of AI ops platforms, but anyone want to handle this question? No. All right, next question. All right, so what strategic direction do you predict emerging in 2020? We've heard terms like hyper-automation, cognitive and chaos engineering, and autonomous testing. So everyone must have an opinion on trends for 2020 they see us going. So let's go around the room. We start with you, with Stephen, and then work our way down.
Yeah, so I would, two things that I'm seeing and I'm anticipating for the next 12 months that are going to be big are incorporation of artificial intelligence into the application testing space. And it's interesting because all the different vendors are talking AI, or they have some capabilities around AI, but it's going to be very interesting to see how the different vendor solutions are going to provide that. We heard yesterday a little bit about UFT and the UFT AI capabilities that are coming. So we're going to be seeing that. I think we're going to see that extend beyond the automation tools. So if we look at the testing tool specifically, we're probably going to see that move into the performance testing side of things. We're going to see that in the test management side of things as well. Octane, I think, is one of the most ready tools to support that because of the level of data that it manages around not just your tests and your test results, but tying that to your agile assets, your backlog, and then tying that to the different teams and what their requirements are and what their resource capacities are, and being able to leverage all that information to make important decisions. And AI is going to support that. It's going to add some additional levels along with predictive analytics that's going to really take these tools to the next level. So that's the first thing that, in terms of my prediction, right? The second is RPA, robotic process automation. And this is something that, while oftentimes not a testing activity, leverages the testing platforms because of, for instance, UFT's capability to understand an application, be able to interact with an application automatically. So we're going to start seeing RPA being used more broadly across all industries. And as we're seeing that, the expertise that's going to allow that to happen is going to come from those automation engineers, from the folks that have testing experience from the last 10 to 20 years. We're gonna see them being able to leverage that. So that's my second one. I'll keep rubbing my crystal ball and see if there's anything else that comes to mind. But those are the two right now.
Very cool. Roger, any thoughts on trends for 2020?
My thunder was just stolen, but I agree 1,000%. Intelligent automation, right? Whether that's intelligent test automation or cognitive or intelligent RPA as well, right? But the incorporation of AI and machine learning capabilities into some of our automation tools are going to help to raise the bar. From a test automation perspective, we mentioned UFT and the newer capabilities around AI and ML. incorporated into the tool. We're really excited about that, not just in terms of the ability to reduce the amount of effort up front, though that's certainly important, right? Initially developing your test scripts and your test automation scripts. But to me, one of the biggest benefits and what I think will help to raise the bar in terms of kind of further automating that last mile and raising the amount of automation overall is in terms of the savings and the reduction in maintenance, right? Because then your test scripts become way less brittle to changes, even if it's a simple UI change in the application. They're able to handle and manage those changes a lot better than they did before, less rework that's needed to be done. So I think that's going to be a really big one for us in 2020. And again, both in terms of testing and RPA right behind that in terms of cognitive RPA. Maybe the other thing that my number two that I'll point out as well is IT testing and other services as a service, right? Consumption-based IT services, whether that's overall application testing, application security testing. And I just see the importance and the popularity of that growing a lot more, the adoption of those types of models growing a lot more for two reasons, or maybe the same reason. Right, a lot of our customers are going through their digital transformations right now, adopting a lot of new technologies and new ways of doing business, new ways of communicating with their customers, their partners, et cetera. A lot of change. And the businesses are demanding that change and demanding speed. So with an as-a-service type model for how we deliver some of these services, right, you can change through consumption-based models much more quickly to reflect changes in requirements from sprint to sprint to sprint as you're kind of going through through the overall development process associated with some of those new applications, capabilities that need to support the products and services. So as a service models, consumption-based models give the businesses more flexibility, which is something I think they're going to be demanding in 2020 because of the digital transformation.
Pretty cool. So, Paul, if this was the Brady Bunch, you would be in the Alice spot. How fitting. Any thoughts on trends for 2020? Paul, you unmute yourself.
I'm so sorry. I thought I'd go without doing that. Okay, so one of the things I'm thinking about is, I love the hat. Yeah. I'm always looking at what's the processes to make it easy to transition into being an SDET, to being an automation engineer. How does a manual tester go to being to get to the level we're at? And I think some of the programming languages have just a learning curve that's hard. I'll say Java is probably the hardest. I like working in easier languages. But that doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with that. It's fine. But what I'm looking at is scriptless automation where you can actually export whatever it is that you're generating. So I know there's tools out there that do scriptless automation, and then you can use it as a proof of concept and say, okay, here it is as a scriptless, and I've been able to automate this, that, and click on that and verify these guys, and as a proof of concept. And then if we want to go, big time, we can export out the code and start building your framework and build it into C# or Java or whatever languages that you happen to support. And I think that's actually also a great tool for novice SDETs, novice people are just starting to learn code. I know everyone talks about record and playback is a bad thing. You should never use it. I don't agree with it. I say that record and playback tools are great for learning the syntax of your tool, your programming language. And if you're just starting out, that's a great way to learn how are elements being identified, how is the code being written. And obviously the next step would be to go into a framework portion, just go all code. That's the way I like it. But there's that's what I'm kind of seeing as the future is scriptless automation to move into a coded framework.
Interesting. Richard, your audio working yet? Yes.
I think it may be. Yeah, very good.
Perfect.
Yeah, I'm sorry I missed out on a couple of the earlier questions because whilst I could hear them and I had things to say, I wasn't able to contribute. Yeah, I'd like to echo what most people have said there. I think AI is going to be a huge thing, particularly if you look at the new capabilities coming into UFT. I think that'll be very big. But I also think sorry, was it Paul had just said.
Yep.
Yeah, about record and playback definitely isn't dead. And I saw a presentation that somebody did at the Ministry of Test event in Manchester in October, where basically the entire premise of her pitch was exactly that. And I do think there's a place. I think it's very important for people who are trying to learn test automation and so on. And so I think bringing people on through record and playback and to understand how things work and the syntax is important. But I think the biggest thing that we're looking at probably in the next 12 months is trying to define everything as code and allow things to environments, test scripts, test data, everything defined as code, stored in Git, run on demand, build your environments when you want them, and then tear them down at the end of your tests. I think there's cloud's obviously been around for some time, but I think it's finally getting into test development environments where people are starting to exploit some of those capabilities to build on demand, test on demand, and then throw away as and when. So I think there's a big push, certainly from our point of view, into that type of technology. And that's what we're doing next year.
Very nice. Graham?
Before I answer that question, can I just make a quick comment to Paul Grossman? In his earlier presentation, I saw the Captain Mercury doll, and I was action figure, and I was most impressed because mine's in the office right now. I thought I was the only one that still had one. But the reason, oh whoa, 3 of us, how about that? Now, the reason I bring that up, apart from I thought it was entertaining, was that for those of us that have been doing automated testing for, I don't even know, 30 years or whatever it is, which is pretty scary. I mean, back then, I remember the first automation tool being from Microsoft, and it was terrible. It was buggy. You were lucky if it ran. But over time, for the longest time, we had just 4 main test tools that we would use, and everybody knew everyone in the industry. But now you look where we are now. For example, I remember seeing on Joe on your site a little while back, you had, I think it was the top 50 automated test tools, and first of all, thank you for putting that together. That's really useful. It gives me a to-do list of tools to evaluate over time. But also, I think it indicates how popular automated testing is. And there really is a niche for everybody that's involved in automated testing. So certainly for those that want a scriptless approach, I'm seeing those tools definitely starting to become a reality, not just a promise. But then you've got obviously a tool like UFT, which I will, till the very last day it's marketed, I would say is one of the best tools ever invented. And then you've got LeanFT for those that are more at the developer end, especially aimed either at developers or for the testing of a very complex application. It's really got its place. So I think just automation tools in general, it's going to just carry on at the incredible rate it's going. We mentioned the other buzzwords of our RPA and AI, cloud, definitely containers, and mobile testing and Jenkins integration. Those are all the things that I seem to hear on an hour by hour basis wherever I go. So I would say that's what's to watch for.
Good answer. I like that one. And Joe just put mute. I got it all. I got it all.
We are that old.
Oh, I lie about my age.
Oh.
Joe, I think you're muted.
I'm muted. So,
there you go.
Jonathan, Mihai seems like he's frozen. I know you're a big Mercury guy as well. Oh, Mihai just unfroze. Let me go to Mihai really quick. Mihai, any thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. My great words of wisdom are: listen to what everybody else before me said, because that's all true. That's all it. Right. That's my answer.
Really? Okay.
No, seriously. I mean, everybody's just said the same thing over and over again, and we all echo each other passionately, I would say. So yes, DevOps, AI, intelligent automation, hyper automation, DevSecOps, AI ops, everything that has to do with AI and self-healing, and so on and so forth. Those are the trends to go for. And I also would like to throw an Expelliarmus spell at Mr. Paul there, because you do have to believe in record and playback, because that's the way into automation. That's the way that all the people in the world are doing it. And yes, it might not be the case for somebody super experienced like yourself, but not everybody out there is experienced. And now to echo what Bishop said, the best way to get into automation is to get the basics with the record and playback. So one thing that I haven't heard anybody mentioning, which is quite funny, was actually the use of Sprinter. So a lot of people actually do not use this little hidden gem that is called Sprinter. That's the free add-in with ALM that actually can take you from recording all the actions on the screen, and then most importantly, you can take the same script and then you can convert it into an EFT automated script. So those are the small little tactical wins that you would get as a manual tester without having to have any kind of coding skills whatsoever. That's going to introduce you into the world of AI. And then from there, you move on to actually creating scripts, creating object repositories, creating harnesses, and so on and so forth, moving over into using the new AI functions and capabilities that Micro Focus is busy developing and launching soon. So those are my few comments that I had on the subject. No offense,
Awesome.
Paul, but playback and recording still rules.
And Jonathan?
Yeah, I'll go against the curve there a little bit. So I started my journey in automation back in the 90s with XRunner. And I was really lucky because I found myself a mentor. I was working as a graduate for an engineering company. The only other person doing automation was a guy called Dave Dubosky, who was based out in Florida. He's done a number of patents, which he filed for Windrunner frameworks that he built back in the 80s and 80s. And it was all case driven. So it was all push dynamic button. You passed in the value from a CSV file, and, it was keyword hybrid data driven kind of frameworks. So I learned a really, a valuable lesson around kind of the code first approach sometimes is very powerful. But actually at that point in time, it was Dorothy Graham, who's again a great figure, and she retired this year. She actually just lives up the road in Macclesfield in the UK. And she started, and she's known as the grandmother of test automation. She started for Bell Labs back in 1970, and is coined to be the first lady to ever created an automation script in 1970. And she did a 1,000th keynote presentation this year, which she retired to. And I remember the holy book, a bit like what Paul's got with the hidden gems on QTP. I remember the first book being the software test automation book, which was my Bible at the time. And I was lucky enough to be part of the experience and test automation book, which she followed up on there. And, it showed just how much we've changed over the last, 3-4 decades. And actually, I think things are going to exponentially increase now. And, the reason why, I know we mentioned hyper automation, I see this trend where we're the power of what we've got within the test automation tools will become the synergy with the tools that are quite mature in the operational spaces like Blue Prism, UiPath. I think you're going to start seeing business process automation that is utilizing the tech, what we've got, the tech they've got, to give us, extremely powerful solutions to give us kind of that scale of potentially hyper automation. I do see that the chaos engineering is a really interesting challenge. Bish said about the low code, no code approach, infrastructure as code, test data as code, performance as code. We're seeing this happening quite a lot with YAML, and this ability to build and destroy environments on the fly. I think the Hyper-V is an interesting one, which you're going to get in with the new UFT area. So I'm really interested to see what happens with that. I must admit, when I saw it yesterday and I went off to things like the AWS device farm, which they use as well, and it was interesting because they've already got fuzzy logic or fuzzy AI built in, so you can literally watch it kind of trying to test your application by clicking on various things. And it didn't do too bad, actually. It ran for about 3 hours and managed to get past a few sign up pages. But this kind of ability to explore the application and then build a model, the last couple of years I've been based out in Santa Clara and with the t-shirt that I'm wearing, but building a model-based testing platform. I think there's a lot around modeling which we're going to see. I know the World Quality Report mentioned it. I think test data is a huge one which no one's still really figured out, and I think test data as code, this kind of the load runner, things like shared data tables, just not evolved. So I think there's a lot more to come, and actually I think Micro Focus are probably on the forefront of this. The visual testing aspects as well. I can see that coming through. The Tesseract for OCR and using computer vision. The way that they're training their algos for the UFT makes a lot of sense. It's now just a case of putting in the hands of the end automation, the next generation of automation engineers to take over and fly the flag. So yeah, really exciting times ahead, and plenty to look forward to.
Awesome. I second that thing for software test automation by Dorothy Graham. You'd be surprised how much information is still in here that's relevant. So that is a great book. All right, we're actually up on the almost up on the time limit. So let's go around one more time. This one would be an actual piece of advice you can give someone to help them with their automation in 2020, and we'll do reverse around. So Jonathan, start with you and work our way up.
Sure. So I'll give you the words from my mentor, Dave Dabowski, back in the 90s when I started out in automation. He said, there's one word that's going to change your life. And the one word was gotta wanna win. And it was this kind of, never give up the good fight. The problem with being on the forefront of this technology is sometimes it's quite lonely and you're on your own trying to find things out. Yes, get connected into the community so you're not alone, and B, you've got to want to win, you've got to want to succeed, and let's help you succeed together.
Awesome. And Mihai, any parting words of wisdom?
Not much more than I've said before. Short and sweet.
Use SaaS as use a test as a service, maybe.
Well,
awesome.
everything. Everybody in here is talking about learning and doing proofs of concept. So therefore, yes, use testing as a service as the platform as much as possible, because that's the only way you can actually get your foot in the door.
Yep.
And that's the only way you can actually start showing the value of testing. And believe it or not, I still see in the market companies that are still undermining a great deal the value that testing brings to bear to the table. So, yes, definitely use testing as a service. Use everything in your arsenal to actually promote the function of testing overall, and then obviously move from there and grow it and mature it to DevOps and Agile and so on and so forth, all the other buzzwords.
Awesome. And Graham, last words of wisdom?
Words of wisdom from me. Wow. I think that's kind of a loaded question, because it's like saying, what kind of a car should I buy? It's very open-ended. I mean, you really have to try and predict, maybe just look at the next 5 years. What are the applications that I'm going to need to test? Are they all web-based? Are they, whatever ends of the spectrum? And then start to look at what is right for your team. Maybe your team is very developer-oriented, or maybe they're more SME-oriented. Maybe there's a good mix. These are the things that kind of decide what tools to use. But you also, in addition to knowing what tools are best for your applications, you have to know what is my right methodology across everything. Do I want to be testing out in the cloud? Do I want to be testing just on a bunch of laptops, or whatever it is? How do I want to invest in test plans and so forth? To have accountability and to have a clear idea of what you want to do going forward. So it's a really hard one to answer, and I would say if you're listening to this and you're really thinking my mind is about to explode with all the options, and I'm going to sound like I'm on commission with Micro Focus, but get in touch with your Micro Focus rep. Tell them what the situation is. Get them to come in and have a look at what you've got going on, talk with you about it, and make some suggestions. They can do some great demos, and I think with the amount of offerings that they have, and the fact that with the tools, specifically LeanFT at that end of the spectrum, it has such great integration with so many other tools. They realize that they're not the only players in the market, that there's all this open source and developer tools that we need to integrate with. So I just think that would be the great place. Go talk to one of their salespeople and set up a demo, have them look at what you do and make recommendations, and then decide where you go from there.
Awesome. Richard, parting words of wisdom or actual piece of advice?
Yeah, I would basically just say make as much time as you can to experiment and learn new things. I've taken a bit of a leap into the unknown, into functional testing, having been a performance tester for decades, and it's opened my eyes to lots of new ways of doing things. We've started looking at things like Jenkins for automation, which was totally new to me up till a couple of years ago. So I would definitely say experiment, and also try and look again at the sort of tools that you've got. I'm doing a presentation at work tomorrow about virtual table server, which I know, I think we were talking a little earlier about test data as code and all those kind of things. VTS is one of those products that's been around as a freebie inside your load runner bundle for 20 years or thereabouts. It's now better supported than it ever was, because it used to be a bit of a side of desk project for someone at Mercury. And tools like that and Sprinter, which most people have access to, but a great many people still don't know they have and don't use and don't exploit the benefits of. I think spending time experimenting and trying those new things can really help bring out extra capabilities that you just don't even know you've got and you don't even know you've paid for. And part of that is also using the community to develop those skills and get ideas from them. So
awesome.
That's what I'd say.
Good stuff. Dark Arts Wizard.
Well, the first thing I was going to say was that about API. Definitely get into that to leverage and extend your knowledge. I did want to kind of clarify that I don't think record and playback is a bad thing at all. In fact, I was actually using UFT 5.0 to record in order to figure out how to get an XPath on a particular object element I could not figure out how to do today. So just to clarify, I'm in agreement with you guys on it's a tool that's really good to use. One last tip, and this is the big one. I'll tell you that this is the way I started in my career. I couldn't afford to go to any of these conferences. Everybody says go to conferences, and they're totally right. And the way I got around getting to conferences was that I put together some little idea, and I did a presentation, and I actually got accepted at 2 conferences almost at the same time. That was 15 years ago, and I'm still doing it. And it's if you're looking at a way to keep your budget kind of slim, put together a presentation, put together a white paper, present it, and the worst thing that can happen is they say yes, come on over. And then you got to actually deliver on it. But it's generally, there's no cost to the ticket to get into a conference. And that's a great way to kind of offset costs and kind of, tell your boss, it's a no-brainer. I don't have to pay the ticket to get in the conference. I'm just going to see a whole bunch of brilliant people and listen to them and bring back great ideas.
Great advice. Roger, any thoughts? Parting words of wisdom?
First and foremost, next time I will bring my wizard hat because I think that's absolutely fantastic. I love it. So what I'd say, everything we just talked about for the last 20, 30 minutes or so, I mean, really exciting, right? Lots of change, lots of great new technologies and automation capabilities that are out there. I'd say, experimentation that we talked about, somebody talked about a little bit earlier, really important, right? Embrace the change. Don't be afraid to try new things, new technologies, new capabilities, right? But don't forget the people aspects associated with those changes as well, right? Because change can be a little intimidating at times, right? So focus on the people also as well as the technology.
Awesome. Robert, last words of wisdom? I thought I saw you move, Robert. Robert.
So I think maybe in addition to a handful of the items that were just described, there's maybe one area to consider looking at that's upcoming, and that is governance around some of these capabilities and techniques, as well as transparency on how the algorithms work and the trust around how these are actually being executed. I think there's going to be a lot of interest in those upcoming, and I'll pass that along.
Yeah, great advice. And Stephen, you started the event today, and now you're ending it. Parting words of wisdom.
Yeah, bookending it. So I'm actually going to take a page from Jonathan's book about using a term, and the term that I'm going to be using with my customers in 2020, and what I have been using, is revisit. Not all of my customers do functional test automation right now, but all of them have at least tried at some point. And especially for those that have not been successful because of myriad reasons, my push this year is going to be revisit for two main things. One, because the technology is there, and the advancements in technology not only make it easier to automate tests and create that automation library, but they also, with the help of AI, are going to make it even easier and easier to condense and focus on that set of tests that are actually relevant. And that's something that I'm super excited to see. I think agile methodologies and DevOps in general help, just because of the involvement that the testing individuals have. It allows them to condense that into what's relevant. And then the second thing is just the fact that you're going to need automation to be successful with DevOps. That's just the reality. And for those organizations that are starting small and maybe have tried automation in the past and are still scared, I think this is going to be the year for them to revisit that and get that success.
Awesome. I just want to thank every speaker once again for making this an awesome day 2. Thank you for your time, your effort, and all you've done for the community. Vivit really appreciates it, and thank you so much for making this a big success. Cheers, everyone. Thanks,
Joe. Thanks,
Joe.
everyone.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you, Joe.
Bye.